So now we'd like to welcome onto the podcast Matt Heron. He is a fly fishing guide and teacher in the Truckee area, and he's the host of the Truckee Fly Fishing Podcast. Matt, thank you for joining us. How's it going this evening?
Really well. Thank you for asking. Appreciate you and the crew having me on. It's an honor to be, continuing the NorCal podcast, family here, so this is going to be a blast. And, things are going well. I literally just got off the water and inhaled my dinner to make it on time. So appreciate you being a little flexible with my tardiness.
Awesome. Of course. It's great to have you here. So unfortunately, we've started all of our interviews for the past 2 months by asking how you're doing, if you're staying healthy, all that. I know the Truckee area especially has been affected by the shutdown and the quarantine. What's sort of the vibe going on in Truckee right now?
Yeah, I would say maybe the last few days or this holiday weekend, for the first time in months, the vibe is kind of upbeat. It's kind of nice to finally be able to say that. Obviously we are 100%, we fully rely on the tourist community. And obviously that has been null and void, since early March or whatever the date was when everything got crazy. But, it's a lot of mom and pop businesses. Of course, there's the big hotel chains and, ski resorts. But, deep down, like most of the community is mom and pop, similar to us, and everyone's getting through it. We see the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, so I'm sure at some point we'll be talking the fishing side of things. But the general vibe in Truckee is upbeat. It's nice to be driving through town a little bit the last 4 or 5 days and see like people eating outside, at
Right.
tables, at restaurants. So that certainly is a nice little pick me up. But as far as outdoor activities, I mean, I'll tell you what, it has been a freaking zoo here with people doing stuff, fishing, boating, camping. I mean, the campground's open. They're overflowing with people, which is not
Questionable,
ideal, maybe,
yeah.
depending on who you talk to and how paranoid you are. But man, the vibe is finally picking up, which is great. Everybody needs it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the outdoor recreation. We're out of Sacramento, and we fished Pewter Creek a few times during this quarantine, and it's just been packed every time. You can't find a parking spot. All the spots that we love to go are just full. So, and obviously fishing's a great way to get out. I mean, we don't want to discourage that. It just seems like everyone has the same idea. Have you seen an uptick in the fishing activity during the quarantine?
Remarkably so. With all of my clients for the last couple weeks since we officially opened, through the quarantine, I was probably, even though our entire spring canceled, right? Overnight, we had 2 months of bookings canceled with me and our crew. And I probably ran a trip a week with locals that I knew that were healthy, went through some protocols even before we were required to do so. And every single person I took out, whether when we were sort of closed or since we've opened, the river has been like 4th of July every freaking day. I mean, just like you're mentioning Pewter Creek, it's incredible. Today was the first day where it was normal. We got to spots we wanted to. We weren't racing to get out early in the morning. People, the last 3 weeks have been itching to get out, combine that with the holiday. And then today was like a breath of fresh air. But yeah, it has been busy.
So I do have to tell you how I first learned about you, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this at all. First, you have a fantastic social media presence. So anyone listening, I recommend go follow him on Facebook and Instagram. But it was about 4 years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, that I came across a video on Vimeo of a fly fisherman on the Truckee River basically diving into the water to grab onto a monster brown trout. And we actually, it was about 4 or 5 years ago that we put that on our website, and to this day, it still gets a ton of hits. And I know
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
I know that the video's I saw it's up to like 300,000 views. I want to hear, finally, after all these years, your story, your side of the story, why you went jumping into the Truckee River after that fish on that day.
Oh, man. So it depends on how much of the story how far back you want to go. But as far as that actual moment, you know, the whole like falling in like crazy ending was to put it bluntly, that fish swam into like 4 to 6 inches of water, and I totally airballed 2 net jobs in a row trying to scoop that fish up. And at one point, you can sort of see in the video, you know, my rod is to the right of me. I'm blowing the net job, and the fish starts to drift downstream. And you can see like my line and indicator and tippet on one side, my rod's on the other. And I'm like, oh my God, she's going downstream. And I'm like caught in the middle between my leader and my rod. And the rest is history. Just kind of did a face plant, put my hand down on one side, her nose went into it, tried to grab her tail with my right hand, obviously ditched the rod. And just a, you know, completely unusual ending to hooking, you know, one of the biggest fish in my life. Getting it on film was just, you know, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, it was just kind of one of those things where it wasn't planned. It was just like either, you know, do a face plant in the water and grab this fish, or it's definitely going to break off. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So. I've never seen that before, and I grew up around fly fishing. But yeah. You sort of see the look in your face, and because in the video, you can't, when you're first watching it, you have no idea what's in the water. You have no idea what you've hooked. And then you see your face as you're looking the fish dead in the eyes, and then you just dove for it. So I always thought of it as, you know, a desperation. I'm not letting this thing get out of my hands for anything.
I'll roll with that definition. It was desperation. There is no way around it.
Well, that was
last case scenario, last resort, whatever you want to call it.
It's an awesome video. It's great. And like I said, I mean, people have been going to our website to watch that video for years. So, I appreciate it. I'm always interested in the story of fishing guides. My father was a fishing guide for 25 years. I grew up in the fishing community. And I'm always interested sort of how you started and then how you turned your passion, how you started fishing, and then how you turned that fishing passion into a career. So what's your story? How'd you get into it?
Yeah, great question. This could be the whole podcast in itself, just this one question. So grew up in upstate New York, fishing with my dad is the short answer. We have pictures of me at like 3 years old in the early 80s catching fish. But you know, like a lot of people, early on, especially through the 80s, it was, you know, bait, lures. You know, we had the Mohawk River in my backyard. It was full of smallmouth bass. We were fishing with like live crayfish and just crushing big smallmouth. But we had it was kind of a tackle and fly shop a couple miles from my house. And I was a neighborhood kid riding my bike there every other day, just being like, what's this fly? And what's this fly to all the old timers, you know? And they were just kind of like, get out of here, kid. You're too young to fly fish. And so finally in 1991, I bugged my parents enough to get me my first fly rod. Always had a fascination with it, whether it was the flies, the casting. You know, back then it was like basically just magazines, the occasional TV show if you got lucky on a Saturday morning, and, you know, going to the fly shop and just bugging the old guys. And my dad had a fly rod. He had some flies, but I never really saw him use it. He was not a fly fisherman at all. And they kind of, the way the story goes is they got me the fly rod just to shut me up, you know? And within a couple of years, I got super into it. I was awful. I sucked at it, but I loved it, right? I remember getting so frustrated. The first trout I ever caught on a fly rod, my first fish was a crappie, which to this day is still the only crappie I've ever caught on a fly rod. My first trout, I was so frustrated. I put on a black rooster tail with a silver blade and just cast it through a big pool and dragged it so the blade would spin just to catch something, and it worked. So my first trout, my first fly caught trout was definitely cheating in the fly fishing world. You know, every year became more obsessed with it. Probably by college, maybe the late 90s, pretty much had given up spinning gear for the most part, other than maybe a few things here and there. And then by college, I was full-blown obsessed, and I double majored in school and got an internship in Montana, which was only supposed to be for 3 months. And it was with the Federation of Fly Fishers. So by pure luck, I got one in Montana. The second thing was I got one in the fly fishing industry, which wasn't really the plan. And as luck would have it, I was supposed to be going to Syracuse to do my master's in fisheries biology. So the plan was 3 months. And within 2 weeks, I got a job offer to stay and never left. Never went back home to finish my master's or to even start my master's at Syracuse. And we were a nonprofit, the Federation, and my position was funded by grant money. So we had a 3-year grant for my new role within the Federation, and which is now Fly Fishers International. By the way, they changed their name in the last 15 years. Long story short, really got my foot in the door in the industry. Awesome job. Had the Yellowstone River in my backyard to fish after work every day. And they called me to their office and like, Matt, we don't know what the heck happened, but we don't know if we dotted the wrong T. The grant writers dotted the wrong I, or crossed the wrong T, dotted the wrong I. But we're only getting a year worth of this funding. And if it doesn't come through, which it doesn't look like it's gonna, you have 2 options. One, we want you to stay. Here's what we can afford to pay you. Or if you decide to leave, we're going to help you get whatever job you want. So I'll try to make this story as short as possible. But within a couple weeks of that happening, it was a bummer. I was in no rush to leave, kind of looking for other stuff, but not hard. And my buddy that I graduated with moved from upstate New York to here, to Tahoe. And I was like, oh, dude, roll through Montana. Like, let's fish, let's party. Haven't seen you since we graduated. And we were a few beers deep at the famous Murray Bar in Livingston, Montana, the fishing bar. And I was like, dude, if you want somebody to start a fly fishing program at that resort, let me know. I'll come do what I've been doing my whole life, but do it as a business. I just passed my certified casting test, certified casting instructor test, was really like hell bent on teaching, right? Long story short, again, within a couple weeks, he called, he's like, they're in, get out here. So I moved like pretty quickly, sight unseen, had never been to Tahoe. I knew it as a skiing mecca, but didn't, I knew the Truckee was tough, but didn't really know how tough it was at the time. And the plan, though, was to only teach. I was going to open up the school, partner with the resort. I wanted to teach, but I didn't really want to guide because I had so many friends that got burned out with it.
Yeah.
Kind of hit the wall, kind of that age-old story. They hate fishing. They hate people. They turn their love into a job and just totally burn out, right? So the first couple of years, I really didn't guide that much. I was giving trips away, and then kind of realized how many trips I was giving away, and I'm just like throwing money out the door to friends, which was fine. But the biggie was I finally learned the Truckee, and I felt comfortable taking people's money to where I wasn't just winging it and kind of hoping we catch fish. And I kind of had these other plans. I got some job offers along the way to leave here, but I'm glad I didn't take any of them. By year 3, the business kind of took off, and we've rallied an amazing crew of independent guides around us. We have about 15 guides and a few full-time instructors. And it's amazing. Like, none of this happens without my wife running the show on the back end and our guides. I mean, they're the workhorses for sure.
So your school, your organization, I guess you'd call it, you're at the resort at Squaw Creek, correct?
We are.
And that's where you've always been?
That's where we started day one. We've been super fortunate to not really have too many hiccups along the way. The way it works is we lease their ponds on their golf course and stock them with rainbows. And that's the shortest explanation of it. It's great for them because they can kind of sell that amenity to their guests. And we can bring in guests from Reno, Tahoe, Sacramento. Within an hour and a half, we get most of our business. Obviously, the backyard like Truckee and North Shore is huge for us. But it's kind of this perfect symbiotic relationship where they can offer it to guests. I can bring most of our business is me bringing people in. They're like, oh, this is a big, beautiful property. Maybe we'll stay here next time, kind of deal.
Yeah.
And we offer a bunch of different classes. Basically, the normal routine is mid-May through the fall. So.
And is that's open to anyone, right? Adults, kids?
Yeah. Great question. So we have a bunch of different classes that we offer. There's maybe 5 or 6, but like our bread and butter is our casting catch. It's a 3-hour class, hour and a half casting lesson, hour and a half fishing. So we are a very beginner friendly market in the sense that we're not, even though like you might think of it, me and like the fishing crew in California might think of Truckee as a destination. We're not really a fishing town. As much as we would love to think that, we're not Bozeman, we're not Redding, we're not Jackson Hole. People are coming here on vacation first, and fishing is like one of the things they want to do. So because of that, we have a very huge demographic of beginners. So that cast and catch class, learn to cast, catch a couple fish is our bread and butter. And then we also have, among others, a kids only class, which is Creek Creatures. We kind of sell that as like 5 to 12 years old, where it's a mix of like casting lessons, catching the bugs, catching fish, fly tying. We kind of give the parents a little leeway on what things we pick to put in. It's pretty custom. But yeah, I could go through all of them, but those are kind of our main classes that, they're our bread and butter.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I'm just picturing, and this might be far off, I'm picturing the parents want to go golfing across the way, and their kids want to do something. They're like, okay, you go fish while we play 18, and it's perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say it's a pretty good mix of parents that participate and parents that do exactly that. We're going to the spa, we're going golfing, we're going to go drive around the lake. And we've always joked with the parents, yeah, like you're more than welcome to join and either watch or fish. We'll get you in there if you want to do it. But man, if you're going to leave, we're like the most expensive babysitters on the planet, so, which is great. The kids have a blast, it's just fun for everybody. So.
Yeah. I grew up in that world. My father did all those types of classes when I was growing up. And we just loved it. But you mentioned sort of it's super beginner friendly, those programs at Resort at Squaw Creek, which is the exact opposite of at least how I think of the Truckee River. I think of the Truckee River as a difficult fishery, one that certainly shouldn't be tried by beginners, without anybody showing them the ropes. Give me your overall view. What's it like to fly fish the Truckee River? Give me an elevator pitch.
I would say the easiest answer is cookie cutter, generally size and not numbers is how we sell it. When people call, we are overly honest about expectations on the phone. We say, your mindset, if you're a beginner, your mindset should be have fun, learn something, and then catching fish in that order. If that's your mindset, you're going to have a great trip no matter what. That said, we are very lucky to have guides that have been doing it on the river a very long time, most of them 10 years plus. It's very rare that we get skunked, even with beginners or kids. Does it happen? Of course. The nickname of the Truckee is the Tricky or the Toughie, depending on who you talk to. Everyone kind of has their own theories on why the river is so tough, and everyone has theories on why it really shouldn't be as tough as it is. But the cool thing is that the icing on the cake is, without a question, we have some of the biggest trophy-sized rainbows, wild rainbows and wild browns in the state. Are you going to find bigger ones in some places? Yeah, but I mean, the Truckee is just your classic freestone river with big wild fish. There's only one small section that gets stocked. All of our fish are wild. So.
Why are the fish so big?
Oh, so big
and few and hard and difficult to catch. I mean, you said there's numerous opinions on this. What's yours?
My take is, for whatever reason, we have very low numbers of fish per mile. Fish and Wildlife has maybe only done one study in my 14, 15 years here that I know of. One of the sections that they sampled was Glenshire Bridge, which is a flat-out mix of wild and hatchery fish. It's right above where it gets stocked. So that kind of skews the numbers a little bit, right? Because there's so many hatchery fish through that stretch, even though that is a public stretch. So we don't at all have good data on what our numbers are. We just know that they're low. Very skilled anglers that might crush fish in other locations, the lower Sac, some of the famous Western rivers, that might catch 10 to 30 fish a day. That just doesn't happen on the Truckee. One of the reasons why that's so unusual is we have amazing bug life. We have as good of quality water as you can imagine, and we have great spawning habitat. So why we don't have more fish, I have no idea. One of the main reasons our fish get so big is the river is loaded with crayfish.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we're fishing crayfish patterns quite a bit, more so than in other places. Not to say that it's the most, but from now through the fall, that's one of our go-to flies that we fish a fair bit, especially later in the summer.
What's your favorite season to fish the Truckee? What's your favorite time of year?
Um, as one of our guides, Dan LeCount says, that's like, what's your favorite ice cream? It's a hard one to pick. I'm a big fan of the fall, October, November. I would say the water temps are good, the bugs are good, the crowds clear out a little. Those browns get pretty grabby pre-spawn and post-spawn. If you want to fish dry flies, it's the summer. If you want to catch the biggest fish of your life, it's the spring during runoff. If you want no people, it's the winter. So that is a long way of answering what's my favorite season.
Tell me, I'm really curious, and I've read a lot about Lahontan cutthroat. Sorry, and so they're in Pyramid Lake downstream, correct? And they're trying to revive them in Lake Tahoe. And I know they famously, were native to the Truckee River. Is there a possibility of a comeback?
So you will get different answers from everybody that you talk to. My personal opinion is all of the stocking that is going on of hatchery Lahontan cutthroats and the fish that are stocked in the river and Tahoe, with very few exceptions, are going to be anywhere from like 9 to 14 inches. Those fish are stocked, in my mind, as a PR move. That is not really a reintroduction plan. Those fish are getting eaten right away by the bigger fish. And there is just no question about the fact that that's happening. Now, when I say stocked in the river, I'm talking Nevada stuff. I'll talk about the Pyramid Lake stuff in a minute.
Right.
So the fish being stocked in Tahoe is great to say, hey, we're reintroducing this species. Are some fish growing to adult size and running up some of the Tahoe tributaries to spawn? Absolutely. I have not seen any data, though, that the wild population is increasing. I mean, those fish are getting eaten by Tahoe's full of big salmon. Lake trout, max out here, we call them. Back home, we call them lake trout. Huge rainbows, huge browns, right? And it's cool when you catch one and you hear somebody getting a nice adult 20-plus incher every once in a while. But with that plan, there's too many introduced species for them to thrive. The cutthroats that are stocked on the Nevada side, say through downtown Reno, to keep it simple, those fish are there as a put and take fishery. Travis Hawks, who's the fisheries biologist for Endow, he's done podcasts, and I've known him for a few years, saying for the fish that don't get eaten right away by other fish or by people, pretty much have a shelf life of only like 60 days. Lahontan cutthroats, even though we think of them as, used to be able to walk across their backs in the Truckee, they are not a moving water fish. They are a lake fish. So they don't do particularly well raising them in hatcheries. They don't get big. When they get really big, they die, which is unusual. When rainbows, browns, and brookies, you can grow them to exceptionally large sizes in hatcheries. Now, I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer. The good news is this huge actual reintroduction process that's going on at Pyramid Lake. It is one of the few success stories. As people in the last 100 years, we have obviously destroyed salmonid fisheries across the country, especially the West Coast. That is a whole nother deal. Those fish, now that we have the true genetic strain as of 2006, which we thought was extinct, what they're calling the Pilot Peak strain, those are the mega fish, 10 to 25 pounders that have been being caught for the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years, if not last 2. They just keep getting bigger and bigger. Those fish are not only now entering the hatchery system to be spawned by man, every year they're getting more recruitment into the Truckee River, and they're spawning wildly without help from us in the river. To go a step further, they're doing a don't quote me on this number, $28 to $30 million fish ladder on Derby Dam, which is the first real dam that they hit that they can't get around without our help. And my geographic location might be a bit off, but once that dam is no longer an issue, I believe these giant fish are going to get up as far as Sparks. So maybe not quite to downtown Reno, but pretty freaking close. And they've been changing the laws down there for the last couple of years, so we can now legally target these fish, which is huge. You could never target them in the lower river, whether you are on tribal land or not. But I mean, that is going to be a really cool deal once that starts happening. It's going to change the entire fishing dynamic of this whole region once people start consistently catching 5 to 30 pound fish,
right?
Out of that lower part of the river. It's going to be a game changer. So that's the icing on the cake. That's the kind of success story we're all looking forward to.
Right. So you're obviously not from the area. Tell me, what are your favorite places, I guess, around the world that you fished?
Oh my gosh. Again, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? So I've been super fortunate to have some amazing clients in the 15 or so years that I've been here. And we've put together a pretty cool little mom and pop hosted travel program where I host trips to different destinations all over the world. And man, we're doing about, this year is the exception. Everything has been canceled this year. On average, 3 to 6 weeks on the road to different destinations all over the place. But my gosh, if I had to pick some of my favorites, Cuba is up there. I'm a saltwater junkie. Trout pay the bills. I will always have a spot in my heart for trout, sipping dries or chucking streamers. But the sight fishing aspect of the saltwater game, because that's pretty much all you do. And I love to sight fish for trout, nothing wrong. But the sight fishing and the casting aspect really gets me going. But Cuba is one of my favorites. Guanaja, which is a little island just south of Roatan in Honduras, is one of my favorite spots. It's kind of off the beaten path. It's not like the Bahamas or Belize that's just hugely popular, right? And I'm a steelhead guy too. British Columbia is up there. We just did an amazing trip last fall to the Naknek, swinging for Alaska's biggest rainbows. We caught some giant char too that were all pumpkined out in bright orange, which is pretty cool. But man, I don't know. I would say the best part about those trips, though, don't get me wrong, that's when like I get to fish. It's rare I get to go fish, my own backyard. But the people that you meet, the culture, the food, really bonding with clients. I mean, that's what those trips are all about. But that I can't travel without my clients, and I have to give them all the credit in the world for allowing me to be able to travel as much as I do, and my wife, of course.
What about Northern California? Have you gotten out? Have you seen all the rivers in NorCal? What are your favorite spots?
I can't say that I've seen them all, but my first several years before the business took off, I was the classic, single at the beginning, dating my wife at the beginning, road tripping with buddies, sleeping in the truck, doing the camping thing. Although I've never hit the McCloud in the fall to try to chase those big browns, I mean, the McCloud is just so cool. It is so unique. It's like if you get around those, I don't know what species of plant they are. I'm sure a lot of your listeners do, those just giant green leaves the size of a Volkswagen bug. I mean, it's like you're in Jurassic Park, right? The water's blue. So the McCloud is up there. What else? A lot of the classic spots. I'm a steelhead guy. I like the Trinity from a number standpoint. Obviously, it can be a zoo up there and bumper boats for a good chunk of the year if the fish are in. But it's just another cool river, mainly because it reminds me of like a bigger Truckee. Freestone, a lot of nymphing. We try to swing when we can up there, depending on water temps and if the fish are super grabby. But of all the Northern California rivers, I mean, the McCloud is just cool.
Yeah. They call them the rainbow of the world because those are the rainbow trout that they use to stock all the rivers from, New Zealand and Japan and Europe. And McCloud is one of my favorite places. It's beautiful.
That red band is pretty special. If you or your listeners haven't read A Synthetic Fish, It is like a must read. It talks about how basically the rainbow trout is the most human-induced invasive species that we've just planted literally across the world, but it comes from the McCloud, and there's a few genetics in there after the fact from some other watersheds up there, but it's a really cool read on how we've just taken this one strain of fish and literally brought it across the world. There's red bands, McCloud red bands in Hawaii. Like, you're kidding me?
Yeah.
So.
So other than fishing, you live in, quite frankly, one of my favorite places in the world. What do you do when you're not fishing in Tahoe? Are you a skier? I mean, you're right next to one of the great ski resorts on the planet. What's your idea of a good day when you're not on the river?
So as painful as it is for me to say this, I was a pretty, I hate the word hardcore, but like growing up, and even when I first got here, I skied a lot. And every year, any of your skier listeners are going to hate me because I live here. I've skied less and less every by the year. A few different reasons. One is our winter fishing business has gotten busier, which is great. It's hard to complain about being busy during a slow time. But my plan is, my oldest is 6. We got him on skis last year for the first time. And my hope is he gets into it, and that'll kind of recharge me to start skiing again. I have no good reason for telling anyone why I don't ski as much as I do, other than we're a little more booked than we used to be. But I don't know. I just have totally dropped the ball with my skiing world. But I try to golf a little bit here and there. Again, used to play a ton of golf, especially in high school. But family stuff, obviously, that's a big part of the life now. To get some off days. But we live in one of the outdoor playgrounds of the world.
Yeah,
there's no question.
I'll tell you why I don't snowboard very much. The knees, my knees are gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It just, you have these grandiose pictures of what it's going to be like getting back up there, and as you get older, it just hurts, and so that's my reason why I don't do it as much. And stuff like fishing is just much easier to get done as you get older. So a little bit more relaxing. I'm not, an extreme sports junkie anymore. So,
I hear you.
I have one last thing that I want to ask you, because I have a personal thought about this, and I've had my personal experiences. Describe a fishing guide. Describe a person who dedicates their life to fishing, and what type of person it takes. Because I've seen I've seen the fishing junkies, and to me, a lot of them have similar traits. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you have a different view on it. But I see the passion behind, fishing guides. And what do you think about, just a normal fishing guide that you come across?
Man, that is such a good question. I would say the first thing that pops to mind of all of the traits would be they have to be a good teacher, and then you can kind of put in the patience, the commitment, the passion, kind of all of the other things. But like if you don't like to teach, like, what are you doing?
Right.
I always tell people, I don't know if you saw it. I threw up a survey maybe a week and a half ago, and for a second of that post that I threw up, I talked about how teaching the sport is what gets me going. Don't get me wrong, when somebody hooks their first fish or their biggest fish or catches their most fish, like, that is awesome. But leading up to that, it's like putting them through the success path of like, hey, tell me where you're at, and where do you want to go? And my job is to kind of take you along that journey, right? It could be somebody that's fished all over the world and fishes 100 days a year. Then we kind of step up our game. Or it could be somebody that's just like, Matt, I don't even really care if I catch one. Like, this is my first day. I just want to be out here and be in the river, maybe see some bugs. Catching a fish is icing on the cake, So it's constantly rolling with the punches, and you gotta have a people personality. And every day, depending on what option we are doing, we're spending 3 to 8 hours with somebody that we have never met, and hopefully it goes well with the personalities clicking.
Right.
So But yeah, I would say that the number one thing would be you love to teach it. So.
That's funny you say that. I mean, my father guided for 25 years, and then he went straight from that to being a teacher. Yeah, and still to this day, we go fishing, and he can't relax. He's constantly saying, "Oh, do this and do that," and God bless him for it. I just want him to have fun, because I do know what you were talking about earlier, how it wears on you. And I saw it sort of at the end of his guiding career, how he wasn't getting as excited to get out and help other people catch fish, because you're carrying all the rods and getting all the lines untangled. But yeah, I just the passion and the excitement to wake up every day. That's sort of what I've noticed in fishing guides. And so it's been fun to watch since I was a little kid. But so I always love to talk to your types.
Where did your dad go?
All over. We're from Redding. So So we spend our summers at the Clearwater Lodge, obviously the lower and upper Sac, Pitt River, a lot of Pitt River, just sort of all up in the Redding area.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So speaking of the places I've fished in NorCal, I have not fished the upper Sac. And that's just been one of those spots in the back of my mind, when I was kind of trout bumming, quote unquote, with my buddies early on. That was one spot I never got to, and it's still very high on the list. So. Yeah,
we go up there. We do videos for Siskiyou County and their tourism bureau, and we always stay in Dunsmuir. And you can literally get an Airbnb on the river and just walk out, your back porch and drop a line. It's beautiful. It's great.
Yeah. It's going to happen one of these years. It has to.
We'll get you up there. Well, Matt, I'm just a big fan of what you do. I love seeing those big fish on your Instagram page, and just sharing your excitement for fishing and the sport in Northern California. I love what you do. So, if people want to talk to you about fishing at your school or on the Truckee, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, great question. Appreciate the offer to kind of throw this info out there. As you might imagine, our Instagram is Matt Heron Fly Fishing. Social media, Facebook is Matt Heron Fly Fishing. Email is mattheronflyfishing@gmail.com. Those are the biggies. For most bookings, that will end up going through my wife, who runs kind of quote unquote reservations department. That's kind of her cup of tea, because I'm on the water all the time. So you may or may not talk to me, but if you send us a message on social media, Facebook or Instagram, 100% it'll be me replying. The bookings go through her, but we just threw up that post the other day that talks about our pond and river package, which is a combination of our 3-hour class and then packaging it with a happer pull down the river, which is hugely popular. We put that post up the other day and got a ton of personal message about it, just with questions. And those were me replying, So, we'd love to get people out there. We have an amazing guide team that, like a lot of industries, lost a good chunk of their season so far. So, any support towards local guides, whether it's us or the rest of the state or the West, or for the whole country for that matter, not to leave out any of my guide buddies back home, support your local fishing guides. It's, it's the definition of social distancing by nature, which makes it a lot easier for people to just call and book rather than, doing other things that they might have to put a little more thought into with the new normal.
Right. Absolutely. And everyone be sure to listen to Matt's podcast, the Truckee Fly Fishing Podcast. I've listened to some episodes there. I actually listened to your Pewta Creek episode, and that was very informative. Yeah, very informative. Yeah. So follow him on social, listen to his podcast. Matt, thank you so much for coming on today. Thanks for all you do, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Absolutely. Love to fish someday. Appreciate the support. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.